The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
We have just finished up one of the most, I don't want to say useless, but least compelling exercises in sports. The preseason in the NFL. Used to be 6 games, then it was 4 games, now it's 3, and before you know it, it's going to be down to 2 because we are going to go to an 18-game schedule sooner rather than later, and that means that the second exhibition game will be more like the last exhibition game, which is basically meaningless. Yeah, there's a few things that may have been decided last night, but none of the starters played. We didn't really get a look at ones versus ones. There were some guys who may have made a statement like Fedarian Mathis, who was a former draft pick and has been injured. He played a pretty good game last night. The most intriguing one is Martavis Bryant, who they picked up a couple of weeks ago, has not played in a regular season game since 2018, had a lot of problems with drugs, bounced from league to league, wound up in the Cowboys camp last year, made the practice squad, and that's what has intrigued Dan Quinn, and we'll hear from Quinn just a moment about Bryant and what he thinks, but it sounds like he's in their plans. May not be on the roster, may be on the practice squad, but he did catch a touchdown pass last night, caught 3 passes, and looked like he's got something left in the tank, and at 6'4", 210 pounds, it's very intriguing to have a guy like that out on the field. But this season is now here. We will have games starting a week from Thursday. The Commanders play their first game on the 8th, which will be at Tampa, 4:30 game. But whatever happens this season, short of winning a Super Bowl, which has never happened with a rookie quarterback, but this season is all about what Chris Collinsworth said leading into the game last night on NBC.
Jaden Daniels has simply dazzled since he's gotten to Washington. And, Mike, I have to say, I think he is going to be a superstar in this league.
And if Chris Collinsworth is right, this season, no matter what the record is a massive success. It all rides on that. The culture that Dan Quinn is trying to instill, that's fine. Maybe they have some players who are going to be real stars down the line. I think the underutilized Brian Robinson is going to have a breakout year. He's going to have over 1,000 yards. Maybe Terry McLaurin will finally have a quarterback after, 13 or so of them over the first 5 years of his career, and he'll have a team that's on its way to winning. The defensive line, which includes Jonathan Allen, the longest tenured player on the team, finally he's going to have a team that's going to have some success. They are acid washing the whole Dan Snyder era in every way that they can, including removing that ridiculous Sean Taylor mannequin, which they put in a couple of years ago, first with ridiculous, non-Sean Taylor issued items like a Nike jersey, which he never wore, and soccer cleats that you'd buy for like an 11-year-old kid, things like that they fixed to a degree, but they took that mess out, and they're going to honor him properly with a statue. We'll get to that. Let's get some thoughts. First, though, from Dan Quinn after the win last night, for whatever the win means, because he didn't play anybody, but they were down 7-0 at the half, and they came back and scored 20 points in the second half to win the game. And, he's trying to motivate guys who only a handful are going to make the roster. But, he's trying to tell them, hey, we play to win no matter who's out there.
What I had told the team at the half, I thought we were really tight, John. I thought I might even said it in the presser the other day where over-trying at this time of year is a real thing. And I felt some of that. It's so damn important. They want it so badly that at times you can be tight and drop a pass or, foul up an assignment just because you want it so badly. And I felt that. That's what I said at the half. I said, if we just play like we're capable of in the second half and finish and let it rip and have fun, good things will happen. And so, but I did feel that, how badly they wanted to be part of it. And I didn't feel that as much in the second half. I felt the guys really responded. I love the energy they had, but that's something that I saw, and I saw a shift down. I like the energy that I saw on special teams, the way we covered, those are things that I was looking for to get a real look at it. And so those are the things that jumped out to me.
Yeah, I mean, they're playing backups, and New England was playing starters because they had Jacoby Brissett start the game. He's, I think, ticketed to be the starting quarterback. All indications are he's the opener for the season, but he suffered a shoulder injury, went out. They brought in Drake May, and he played a lot. And the question was, well, if Brissett is hurt, if he can't play in the opener, why are you playing Drake May now? You get him hurt, you're not going to have a quarterback for the opener. What are you doing? But they played him a lot, and May looked pretty good, 13 of 20 for 126 yards, and he threw a touchdown pass in the first half to Kevin Harris, 18 yards. But he was playing behind an offensive line that I presume had some starters on it, given that they were playing their top two quarterbacks. And that offensive line was flagged 8 times for false starts, holding, or illegal formation. Some of that may have been related to the way the defensive line played. And Fedarian Mathis and John Ridgway, who are both guys who are on the bubble to make the team, they played well. So that's an encouraging thing. You know that you're going to have Payne and Allen. They've been there forever, starting on the defensive line. But that's something to keep an eye on. Now, as far as the roster goes, and this is the big thing that everybody's going to be focused on for the next 26, 27 hours, whatever it is. The deadline is 4 o'clock tomorrow. You have to be down to 53. Used to do 2 cuts. Used to be a cut to 75 and then a cut to 53. They don't do that anymore. It's just one cut, all one cut. And you're going to see, a lot of comings and goings from teams, and you'll see guys signed and they're gone a day later or 2 days after that. It's really crazy the way this now works. But with the Commanders having the number 2 choice on the waiver wire because they were the second worst team in the league, they're going to have the second shot at just about everybody who becomes available. And this is Quinn discussing about the roster cut to 53 tomorrow, but also a roster that's going to be in flux, even he says, into the first week of the season.
Your process now to figure out, here's the final 53.
Yeah, it's honestly one that's been ongoing, for a long time. And Adam and I spent a lot of time together going through the roster, digging in and finding it. And in fact, he was, watching a whole bunch today, a film. And that's this time of year, what goes on for the initial 53. What does that look like? Who's there? It's a puzzle, to put together. But we'll spend a bunch more time here over the next couple days and just make sure we can find the right fit for the team. As you know, there's probably a little bit of fluidness even past the opening game as roster decisions get done with veterans and those types of things. So that's what you have to look at for the big picture. We certainly don't want to be in this position from a claiming order again, but if you have it and there's opportunities that you need to use, then, that's Adam and his staff will dig in hard.
Now, there's a projection in the Post today of who's going to make the 53, and the 2 quarterbacks that played last night, they're not going to be on the team. Jeff Driscoll played the first half, and then in the second half, Trace McSorley played. He's a great story, local kid from Ashburn, great player at Penn State, has been in the league, in and out with teams, including Arizona, where he made a start, played in Baltimore, backing up Lamar Jackson, but he's one of those fringe guys, and last night might have been his last hurrah. So the 3 quarterbacks that they're going to take are obviously Jaden Daniels, who will be the starter, Marcus Mariota, who will be the backup, and then they took Sam Hartman, who didn't play much in the preseason because he got hurt. He played in the first preseason game, didn't play in the last 2. But they really like what they see. Free agent out of Notre Dame, had a really good career at Wake Forest before he played last year at Notre Dame. And the free agent contract that he signed had some guarantees in it. So they must really think highly of him for the future. I thought Driscoll looked pretty good last night, but they're probably going to release him today. Now, the most intriguing roster spot could go to, and may not be a full roster spot, maybe a practice squad, but Martavius Bryant, who's an incredible story. He's been drafted 10 years ago out of Clemson, had some big years for the Steelers, last played with the Raiders, the Oakland Raiders, in 2018, has gone from league to league to league, found himself with the Cowboys last year on the practice squad, and Dan Quinn was really intrigued. He's coaching against him because it's his defense working against the scout team offense, which would include Bryant. but he's looking at him at 6'4". He was heavier last year. He says he's down to about 205, 207, something like that. And so he likes the idea of Bryant on this roster. And whether he keeps him or not, we'll have to see. The projection from Nicky Jabala and Sam Fortier on the receivers that they will keep. McLaurin, of course. De'Ami Brown has played his way on. He was a guy I thought was on the bubble this year, but they seemingly like him. Olamide Zaccheaus, who was with Philadelphia last year, looks like he's made the team. Luke McCaffrey, their third-round pick. Bryson Tremaine, he's also a big receiver. And Byron Pringle, that's their projection. They're saying that Jamison Crowder will be cut. He's a reliable punt returner, but they may have what they're looking for with Kez Allen. I think they like him. That's a guy who was a receiver that they've converted to running back. Also on the list that they have being released is Bryant, but this was put out before he had the 3 catches and the touchdown last night, which leaves Dan Quinn saying this about this very intriguing guy.
You feel his size, obviously, but I just felt his competitive nature in this one, John, to learn it. It's not easy to get, jump down and put in the middle of an offense or a defense and learning it. So for him to come in and spend the time with Bobby Ingram, who, if you were somebody to come learn from, he's the one you'd want to pick. And so I was just really proud of him at the end. There was a PI that, went his way, a touchdown at the end. So I was very excited for him.
Can those plays push a guy onto the roster and make you guys say, hey, we can't risk losing him?
I think as we're going through, Siri must have heard that one. I think as we're going through there, hi Siri, as we're going through that, I think that's an important consideration. But Adam and I will go look at the tape and from Martavis and others and finding, what unique things do they have, and then how would we feature them.
Okay, and also there's this. While he was making these plays in the fourth quarter, meaningless plays, I understand it's, backups against backups, but the teammates were supporting him. Here's a guy who hasn't been in the league in a long time. He's like an enigma here. Well, what is it with this guy? But Quinn pointing out that everybody seems to be behind him.
As a ball player and a teammate, you really have appreciation for somebody's journey, maybe even if you might not have been a part of that. But you recognize it when things don't always go the way you'd hoped it would. And so for someone like him to, stay with it, that shows a lot of grit, where it would have been real easy just to walk away and not be able to do it. I had a chance to coach him some last year, and I was impressed. I didn't forget. And so would he make the most of that opportunity? And so I felt that energy from him. So I think it's probably a combination of he's a good teammate as a new guy here, but there's also some appreciation for a story that shows some real resilience and some fight, which, these guys certainly appreciate.
It sounds like Quinn is going to, as they say, stand on the table for him. It's not all his call as to who stays on the roster. He's got some say, but Adam Peters sets the roster. That's what the general manager does. And if he doesn't make the 53, he could be on the practice squad. Used to be, I think if you played a full season, you were ineligible to be on the practice squad. That changed. Anybody can be on the – if Tom Brady wanted to come back and be on somebody's practice squad, he could do it. So it sounds to me like if Quinn doesn't think he can be one of his receivers, that he puts him on the practice squad, and in preparing his defense, he's got a big receiver to go against, and if you have some injuries, he could play. Now there's still speculation that they're going to go out and get one of these disgruntled big names that, with the trade of Jahan Dotson last week, that they are still very interested in getting a top-notch receiver. But, and I'm going to play in the 10 o'clock hour a lot of what Josh Harris said at his news conference last night. It sounds like the plan for this organization is not focused on this season. It's focused on seasons to come. And they want to build a team that can be a contender year after year after year. And making a short-term move, giving up draft capital, spending a lot of the cap space, all the things that you would have to do to get in one of these guys, it sounds to me like that's not going to happen. So if Bryant makes the team, that might be a tell that, we're in this for the long term. And, he's going to be 32 years old. We don't think he's a long-term fix here, but he could provide some answers and could give us another look with our offense at his size. The size is such a big part of it. And really, when you look at what happened to his career, because he was on his way to being a great player with Pittsburgh. He had some big years with them. Just the performance not the performance. I guess it was substance abuse. It was not necessarily performance enhancers, but he just could not shake that. And maybe he finally has, and given another chance, let's see if he makes the most of it. Some other names that are on the possible cut list, as they have to get down to 53 by tomorrow. Draft picks, it just underscores just what a disaster it was in the Ron Rivera era with the draft. Ricky Stromberg could be one of the cuts on the offensive line. He was a third-round pick a couple of years ago. Cole Turner, I thought he played well at times, but Ben Sinnott, who they picked this year, has looked really, really good, both in training camp and in games, so Turner could go. Also, Efe Abada, I don't think he was a draft pick, but he had shown some potential here. Could be gone. And then this list that was put together in the Post before last night's game listed for Darian Mathis. I don't know if he played his way onto the roster last night, but did look good playing against mostly backups. But the 4 defensive tackles, as they projected, Allen and Payne, Johnny Newton, who is coming off the foot surgery, but I guess they feel confident enough that he's going to be able to help them this year, and Jonathan Ridgway. Mathis being cut along with some other names that you're probably not familiar with. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with Mathis. Or could it be a question of between Ridgway and Mathis, which one makes the team? They have to make a decision there. Possibly they could trade him. I don't know, but he's had problems with injuries. And then the other thing to look at is the kickers that are going to be released this week and how many they bring in. Cade York, they didn't really have a chance to test him last night. He hit a couple of chip shots. One of them was from, 34 yards, and the other 33, so essentially extra points, and he made both the extra points after the touchdowns. But I would expect them, even though they traded a draft pick to Cleveland to get him, I would expect them to bring in other kickers. And the draft pick that they sent was conditional. I believe it's conditional on him making the team. So they could cut him loose and not have to give up anything if they decide to, or they could keep him depending on the other kickers that are available. But Tressway will obviously make the team, and there's a new snapper named Taylor Ott, O-T-T. Has to be the shortest name in the NFL, right? Anybody have a two-letter last name? I don't think so. All right, coming up, we will shift to baseball. Joey Votto was on the Dan Patrick Show, and we played a small portion of what he said last week in his retirement speech that he gave. Not a speech, but the retirement little news conference that he gave after giving up baseball at the age of 40, 17 years with the Reds. He had signed with Toronto and never made it to the majors, played in the minors, and finally threw in the towel. But it's almost an emotional thing for anybody to listen to, whether you played sports or not. But when the time comes for you to go, no matter who you are and no matter what level you reach, it's not easy. I was a bad high school football player, but I was sad after my last game knowing I was never going to play football again. You extrapolate that out to those who get to the college level, and the dream ends before the pros, and the ones that get to the pros, and the dream ends there, and then the ones that have great careers like Joey Votto, which will probably put him in the Hall of Fame, and the torment that he goes through in giving up the game. It's really interesting to listen to, and we'll get to it next. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Something that hasn't happened around here in over 25 years, and I'm searching my brain for how many times Jack Kent Cooke did a news conference. Not very often, maybe when he was trying to get the stadium built at Potomac Yard. But by and large, he didn't hold them. And we, I guess, heard from Edward Bennett Williams at times. But Josh Harris had a news conference last evening, before the Commanders played their game against New England here, and he answered questions for about 25 minutes. And we found out some information. Talked about the name, talked about the stadium possibility, projections for this season, things like that. I mean, it's what most owners do in every other city, but not here. And so it's like, whoa, look at that. Here's an owner of a Washington football team answering questions and answering them honestly and not wishing everybody a happy Thanksgiving on the day after New Year's Day. So we'll hear a lot of what he had to say coming up at 10 o'clock. Some baseball here. And Joey Votto last week announced his retirement. I mean, not that this shook the baseball world. He played 17 years with the Reds, and they released him and was wanting to see if he had anything left. And what he found out was he didn't have enough left. He was signed by his hometown team, Toronto, played the minors with them, and then finally threw in the towel last week. And I would imagine he's going to get into broadcasting because he's really smart and insightful. Didn't sound like he's got an itch to manage, but maybe he's going to do that. It's probably going to take some time to do it. Won't be doing anything until next season. But this is about the struggle that all athletes go through when they realize it's over. It's time to go. Some walk away, and there's only a few really, the best of the best that have walked away at the top, like Jim Brown and Barry Sanders. Some of them just figure that's enough. I'm ready to go. But most of them want to make sure that they've wrung everything out before they go. Like they don't want to leave something behind. Brett Favre struggled with this for a while. He was basically pushed out of Green Bay and then tried to retire, couldn't do it, and he knew that he had something left, which he did. I mean, he had a really good year with Minnesota, had a good year with the Jets the year before, but hurt his arm, tore his biceps, and they didn't make the playoffs. Had he stayed healthy, that team might have been, a Super Bowl contender. That's how good they were. But, for most of them, it's a struggle to leave the game, and it was for Joey Votto, and here's how he described it when he was on the Dan Patrick Show on Friday.
So I played 17 years with the Cincinnati Reds, and all of them great, and the fans were great. I played well for most of it, and then there was just no interest, no major league interest in the offseason and free agency either. And I reached out to the Toronto Blue Jays, my hometown team, and signed a minor league contract with them. And I got hurt in spring training, and truly, it feels like retirement since last fall. It feels like my last game in Cincinnati was, everything went quiet. There was no interest. When you're not on stage, nobody cares. I wasn't able to perform and compete in front of fans on television, do interviews. Your phone goes cold. Your circle gets really, really small, and it's really felt like retirement over the past 9 months. So I think if you were to ask me after the last day of the season last year, I would have had a much different answer than I do now. But now I'm not quite as afraid because I basically felt like I've retired over the last 9 months.
Yeah, but I've been around athletes for 40 years. You guys don't want to be told when to retire. You have to realize yourself. Even if others see it, I couldn't have convinced you, hey, just stay with the Reds, retire a Cincinnati Red, don't try to do this anymore. You're good. Come back, retire, have an official retirement with the Reds. But you had to explore that, not me or anybody else.
I think in my experience, so I had a pretty serious injury in 2022, and I couldn't stand the idea of injury essentially crushing my competitive ability. And I'm not talking about the internal, I'm talking about the physical ability. And the idea of an injury essentially ending not my peak, but my ability to compete. When you enter a season, you're thinking, and almost my entire career, I thought I'll be at the All-Star game. Almost my entire career, I thought I'll win an MVP award this year. Virtually my entire career, I thought I'll be trending towards a playoff, a World Series, a great season. I'll be able to look back with positive reflection. And the last couple of years, they were just such ugly performances that I thought this year will be the year. I'll be able to prove it. I'll be healthy. I'll be able to be an all-star. I'll prove to them, they should have re-signed me. I'll prove to the league, you should have signed me. I'll be at I'll be able to have my moment. And at some point there's an end to it. And I think the thing that I said whenever I was asked, should you end your career? I said, no, I want the game to tell me I'm done. I don't want a team to tell me I'm done. I don't want somebody in the media or a family member or a friend or a fan to say you're washed. And I was washed. I mean, I was done probably last year at some point, but I'm the one that has to be able to make that decision. And that's where I'm at right now. And I can say I was down in Buffalo. I played for the AAA team for the Toronto Blue Jays in Buffalo, and I played in Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, and I played in Worcester, if I'm saying that correctly, Massachusetts. I rode the bus. I carried my bags, and I still wanted to make it happen. When I say carry my bags, carry my hotel bags, I was doing the minor league life, and I still wanted to make it happen. And it wasn't until the other day when I didn't want a plate appearance, when the coach was like, "Do you want this at bat?" And I was like, I don't. And I've never had that. I've always had a direction. I've always been like, I'm going that way. And I was like, I'm good. And I'll share a quick story. So I'm sitting on the bench, and the coach asked me if I wanted a plate appearance. And my late father, who died 16 years ago, and I had a really strong relationship. He was, to this day, when you lose someone like that, it's something you can't ever fill. And he and I played catch together, and we loved the Toronto Blue Jays. And our favorite player was Devon White. He had a specific catching style, and he's a fantastic defender and a real charming personality. We just loved him. He was the guy for the Blue Jays, our guy. And so we'd go out and play catch, and he'd try to catch like Devon White. I'm 9 years old, 11 years old, and we're playing catch together. And I'm sitting on the bench in Buffalo, passing on a plate appearance. And guess who's sitting beside me? Devon White. And he said to me, "So what do you think you're going to do?" And he was talking about my hitting style. Like, what adjustments do you think you're going to make? And I go, "I think I'm done." And he goes, "You mean retire?" And I go, "Yeah, I think I'm done." And he goes, "Okay." And it was like a full circle moment to be able to have a childhood. I'm getting emotional talking about this, but have a childhood icon and something that I was able to share with my father sitting next to me, and it was poignant, poetic. You draw sort of connections even if they aren't real, but that felt like a genuine connection for me. That felt like that was almost like poetic. That felt like an end to a story. And I went into to the clubhouse, thanked my minor league teammates who in my opinion, deserved a thank you, because I took plate appearances from them. I took playing time from them. The guy that I replaced hit a grand slam, I think today or yesterday, where I would have been playing. And that was enough. That was enough. Thank the manager, thank the general manager, and then I shared with the public that I'm retiring, and that's it, in the best of ways. So I feel good about it.
It's Joey Votto going through all the turmoil that he went through inside, making the decision to retire. I saw him hit a home run last season at Nats Park, but he was not the same as what he was a few years ago. He had a shoulder injury that caused him to miss most of, I believe, 2022. Came back in 2023 with the Reds, but they released him at the end of the season. And, the old story is that an athlete dies two deaths. He dies when his playing career is over, dies a little inside because that's his identity. That's everything he was up to that point, to get to the major league level, the amount that you have to put into it to do that. And he did it for 17 years, and then the decision to go. And then at some point he will pass away, but he's probably got half of his life to go, more than half. He's only 40 years old. So it's an interesting kind of existence that they lead, and I've seen it at all levels. And I remember watching minor league players when I was covering minor league baseball in San Antonio, where they reached the end of the line, and that's all they had ever aspired to be, was major league players, and they come up short of the dream. And their dream lasted so much longer than the rest of us that when they have to give it up, it's so hard. And here's Votto, who achieved everything, but needed to make sure that there wasn't anything left before he walked away. A couple of other baseball stories. I don't know why this doesn't happen more often. Thank God it doesn't. But yesterday, Yankees were playing the Rockies, and behind the plate is umpire Nick Marley. And in the fifth inning, Giancarlo Stanton, his bat broke as he swung, and a piece of the bat went into Marley's mask and neck. Medical personnel arrived on the field. He was put in a neck brace and a stretcher before he's carted off the field. The Rockies sent word later that he was doing well. But again, umpires, how many games have been played in Major League history? Baseball bats break all the time. The barrel usually shoots out into the infield, but you'd think that this would happen more often, and maybe it has a few times over the years, but I'd never heard of it happening before. But hopefully Marley is going to be okay. They made a few changes in the umpiring crew and finished up the game. But yeah, it's that's a scary existence behind the plate. The pitchers are throwing faster than they ever have. There's more swinging for the fences, more broken bats, I'm sure. And thank God it wasn't more serious. And you may have heard about the Babe Ruth jersey from the famed called shot game, Game 3 of the 1932 World Series. This jersey from Ruth was sold less than 20 years ago, 2005. It went for $940,000. But since then, they have managed to do some photo matching research and have found that, indeed, that is the jersey that he wore. So it sold last night for $24.1 million at Heritage Auctions. Pretty good investment. Whoever bought it in 2005 for less than $1 million sold it for $24 million. The previous record for any sports collectible sold at auction was a Topps 1952 Mickey Mantle card, a rookie card, which sold for $12.6 million in 2002. There was also the Michael Jordan jersey from Game 1 of the 98 finals that went for $10.1 million. Yeah, that's 1998. This is 1932. This is almost 100 years old. And what the experts said when looking at this, they said this is essentially the Mona Lisa. It's a very mythical moment that crosses not only into baseball history, but American history, pop culture history. I think it's the most significant piece of sports memorabilia in the world, said one expert. Barry Mizell, president of Media Gray Authenticated, one of the companies that photo matched the jersey, said a Babe Ruth called shot jersey could be, if not the most important sports relic in American history, in world history. And, this was the last World Series home run that Babe Ruth ever hit. It was the last World Series that he participated in. And so that only increases the value. But, the story that goes along with it is more than just Babe Ruth wearing this jersey for his last World Series home run. It's whether or not he called the shot. And Ruth helped to push that along. There's been a lot written about it. The best thing I ever saw about this, you may have heard me say this before, but when the anniversary of this came up, I guess it would have been 1992, which would have been the 60th anniversary of the called shot, and people were looking back on it and trying to determine if, in fact, Ruth did say, yeah, I'm going to hit the home run out there. Shirley Povich said, I love this, he wrote a column, he said, I looked back in my notes and I couldn't find any reference to Ruth calling the shot. So he was there. He saw it. And he wrote about it that day. I guess in his column in the paper, there wasn't any mention of it. But those were eyeballs that were actually there. So I tend to believe it was just, Ruth pointing at the pitcher or pointing at something else. But the called shot is just something that helps increase his legend. But I am one that doesn't necessarily believe it happened. Makes for a great story and probably made this jersey sell for multiple millions more than it would have, but I don't think Babe Ruth really called the shot. Coming up, we'll get to what Josh Harris said regarding the stadium search, also the name. A lot of topics covered in his news conference yesterday, what Jahan Dotson said about being traded from Washington to Philadelphia, and a whole lot more. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. So, got to do a little catch-up here. But if you've been in and out of the station for the last few minutes, we're good. We're good to go. We're going to hear from Josh Harris. He held a news conference last night before the game. Also, Jahan Dotson talked to the Philadelphia media after the trade last week. And Frank Caliendo, he did Madden better than anybody, the late, great John Madden. There's a new movie that's coming out with Nick Cage playing John Madden. So Caliendo was on the Dan Patrick Show last week doing Nick Cage doing John Madden. I mean, it's just as Madden would go, it's just a really crazy thing. So we'll get to that coming up, but I wanted to roll through some of the comments last night from Josh Harris. He held a news conference about 2.5 hours before the game started, and this is something that has not happened with ownership of this team, right? Jack King Cook, I don't remember doing news conferences except when he was trying to tell everybody, we're going to build a Potomac Yard and it's going to be beautiful. And it wasn't, or when he'd fire a coach, sometimes he would talk or, things like that. Joe Gibbs retired, but he didn't really do them. Dan Snyder never did them. Josh Harris has done them. This is, I think, the second Q&A that he's done with the media, and this was, kind of a season launch news conference as they played their last exhibition last night, the only one that they were playing at the stadium, which is being refurbished. He's dumping $75 million into it, and you could say, well, when is the new stadium coming? What do we need to have this one fixed up? Aren't we getting a new stadium in a couple of years? No. It doesn't sound like that. In fact, you're probably looking at 6 more years of them playing at what is now called Commanders Field. I guess they hope to get a corporate name on it, but that's what it is now. And this was Harris last night explaining where they are, which would include what's happening in the in Congress and in the Senate regarding the RFK bill, which, and if you're not familiar with this would take the lease. It's on federal land. They would change the terms of the lease. They could build commercial properties, restaurants, hotels, and so forth around it, extend the lease for 99 years, which would pave the way to build on the RFK site. Here's Harris on where they are right now.
Yeah, we're working super hard, right? I mean, it's taking up a lot of my own mind space to find our next home. But, and as you know, we have conversations going with multiple jurisdictions, and not a lot really to say about it per se, other than, as you peel the onion, things get more and more detailed, more and more advanced. I mean, you're aware of some of the things going on in D.C. and the congressional support. We're hoping to get the Senate to buy into that also, probably after the election. So we'll have to, obviously I'll leave it to you all or other pundits to predict political action, but a lot of good stuff going on and very positive, but not a lot to share.
Why will that be after the election for you? Why is your focus after the election?
Yeah, I just don't think so. If you look at what's happening in the Senate realistically, and now I'm really getting out of depth, there's not a lot happening, right? Everyone's focused on the election. So this is the kind of thing that would have to be part of a series of bills that would go through in the lame duck session. So it's not really realistic to think that's going to happen before the election.
If the RFK bill fails, would you commit to another legislative effort to get D.C. on the table, or would you be open to making a decision before that?
Yeah, I think I'm hoping that we can get some action before the change to the next Senate and Congress and administration, because I think that's when, all bets are off. I don't know. The answer is it's very hard to predict what that looks like. So ideally, since we have a lot of stuff lined up right now, it would happen in the lame duck session. But again, now you're really predicting the inner workings of Washington.
How firm is that? People throw out the 2030 date for when you want it open. How firm is that in terms of when you know?
Yeah, it's a target. I think it's a realistic target. I mean, I wouldn't say that, again, there's there's political things that need to occur. There's land zoning, a whole lot of other things. A lot of it is not within our control. So there's no way to predict a specific date, but I think that's a reasonable target.
Reasonable target. 2030. So you're looking at 2024, 2025, 2026, 2027, 2028, 2029. 6 more years. 6 more years in Landover. So get used to that. They've made some changes. They've got concession stands where you don't have to wait for a cashier. They think they can get you in and out of there in 90 seconds. They've got what they call egress and ingress, getting in and out of the stadium. They've made that faster. But it is what it is. They're putting as much lipstick on this pig as they can, but it's still a pig. It's still the worst stadium in the NFL. They realize that, but they're making it better, making it as good as it can possibly be while it's there. Meantime, he's got something else on his plate right now, which is a big move. He's got to find president of the team. Jason Wright was hired by Dan Snyder, I'm told, with the urging of the league when all the reporting was going on at the Washington Post and all the executives had to leave after the toxic culture and so forth. And, Wright was faced with an impossible situation, but he didn't really do a good job with it. There was one blunder after another. And now he's announced that he's leaving the team. I'm sure he was told that he wasn't going to get his contract renewed, but he's on the job until they find somebody else. And according to what Nikki Javala has in the Post, they're pretty close to hiring somebody. So it could happen even before the opener on September the 8th. But this is Harris discussing the search now for a new team president.
We're looking for a new president, and that's my most important job as managing partner is finding the coach, finding the GM, finding the president. So the president's super important, and I'm really engaged in it and personally leading it, and going back to talking to search firms and talking to candidates and all that. So and I'm obviously I wish Jason did an amazing job for us transitioning. Came in during previous ownership, transitioned the franchise through a very difficult time period, and welcomed us and did and continues to do an amazing job for us. So I wish him well. So that's like the next area of focus.
Yeah, and that'll be very important because Josh Harris does these news conferences, and I guess will continue to do them until he finds somebody who can really run them, act like a leader of the team. I don't think Wright ever came across very well in these things. He's smart. He went to University of Chicago Business School. He tried hard, but it was just too many blunders, too many mistakes. And realistically, when a new ownership comes in, no matter who's in that spot, he's going to be replaced. They want their own guy. That's what happened. But one of the big blunders was this Sean Taylor mannequin. And among the many disgraces of the Dan Snyder era was whenever the heat was turned up with investigations or reporting with the Post with the toxic culture that was going on in the organization, they would drag the carcass of the dead Sean Taylor out and use it as a shield for everything else that was going on. And they had a hastily put together number retirement ceremony where Dan Snyder, looking like a homeless person standing there in a hoodie, is holding up his jersey in front of a porta potty. It was disgraceful. And then when the heat gets turned up again in November of 2022, this is when Snyder and wife were trying to hang on to the team. Remember the photo op at the midfield stripe in Dallas, standing next to Jerry Jones, trying to say I'm with him. They were trying to do anything. And again, they went the Sean Taylor route. So they decided that they were going to put a mannequin, not a statue. It looked like that Jason Wright had stopped at a Dick's Sporting Goods on the way to FedEx Field and bought like a Sean Taylor jersey, a helmet, a pair of cleats for like a 12-year-old playing soccer, and threw it all together on like one of the mannequins from the back and put it up as the Sean Taylor tribute. It was incorrect. It was a Nike jersey. Nike was not sponsoring the uniforms when Taylor played. Reebok did. He didn't have the tape. Remember, he used to put that on his face mask. The shoes look ridiculous. He used to put spats on real football cleats. So 2 weeks later, they got that fixed up, but it still looked ridiculous. So, the new ownership comes in and goes, oh, man, that's a Sean Taylor tribute. So they have now worked together with the family, and they are going to have what they call a first-class tribute to Sean Taylor. And his daughter, Jackie Taylor, was 18 months old when he was killed, said, I'm thankful for Josh Harris and the Commanders family for their continued commitment to keep my dad's legacy alive. I look forward to sharing plans in the future and learning more about my dad through the process. They're going to put up a statue for him. And this is Harris talking about that and the decision to have a proper tribute to Sean Taylor.
I think that honoring our alumni and obviously Washington football, the glory of Washington football, 3 Super Bowls, we have a lot. But Sean Taylor is particularly important for obvious reasons. And I wanted to make sure that he had a first-class memorial, first class exhibit. And so we've been working closely with the Taylor family and came to the decision jointly that it was probably time to look for something new, and we'll be considering that over the next season with the family. And so I was, but it's part of a bigger picture, right? Which is that in the NFL, I mean, if you're in NFL, the fraternity of NFL players, right? So if I were an NFL player, I would look at, how we have an incredible number of people that were really good, and so we're trying to embrace them all, but Sean Taylor in particular.
My feeling on statues is they should not be erected to someone who is living. And there are several that I believe should go up in addition to Sean Taylor. Sammy Baugh, there should be a statue. He was the first really great player in the history of the franchise and was named in the first half of the 20th century the greatest pro football player ever, played 16 years, won 2 championships. I would have a Sammy Baugh statue. I would also erect one to Bobby Mitchell, who was the first African-American player in the team history. He worked for them for a long time. He was a fine, fine man, and I think that I would have a tribute to him. His number has been retired. And then Sean Taylor. Those would be the 3 that I would have up now. In years to come, I hope many years from now, when Joe Gibbs passes away, he would obviously deserve a statue, and others who played for the team as well or work for the team. But those would be the ones that I would have. And the Sean Taylor one makes sense, not just because he's deceased, but because of his story, the tragic story of how he was cut down in his prime. That's part of the history of this team. And it's important for people to recognize who he was and what he was all about. And that's what statues are there for. I mean, look, at M&T Bank Stadium, where the Ravens play, there's a statue of Johnny Unitas. He never played in that stadium, and he never played for the Ravens. But in Baltimore football history, he's a very important figure. So he should have a statue. Now, they have one to Ray Lewis, and Ray Lewis was a great, great player. I just don't feel that statues should be erected to people who are living. That's just my opinion on that. Coming up, more from Harris, including the possibility that we will get the draft here at some point and the future of training camps being held in Ashburn this year, but will it stay there? We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Bram Weinstein Show now at 11 o'clock. Bram now in his 5th year calling the Commanders, called last night's win over New England. Have some thoughts on that. Cut down. They got to get down to 53 by tomorrow. That's coming up at 11 o'clock. I'm rolling through some of the comments last night from Josh Harris as he held a news conference prior to the game with reporters, talked for about 20, 25 minutes about various things, including the stadium issue. And he does not expect any real traction on that until after the election because that's what everybody's focused on. But there is that RFK Stadium bill, which would change the zoning and clear the way for the possibility of the Commanders moving back to D.C., which I think most people want. But, because of the compressed time schedule and the fact that the recess comes on December 20th, just about 6 weeks after the election, makes it difficult. So he's not sure about that. He's keeping an eye on the bill. Could be reintroduced for 2025, but the clock is ticking, and he's hoping that they can be in a new stadium by 2030. That could very well be in Landover. It could be on that site. He doesn't, he's leaving the options open for the DMV. I think you can probably rule out Virginia. But Maryland would be in play. They own the land right there. They could build on that site, build it closer to the Morgan Boulevard metro station, and we might just have to live with that. That they've got things change for getting in and out of the stadium easier. It's probably going to be a smaller stadium. It's probably going to be 60,000. And with the state of Maryland paying for some of the infrastructure for roads and so forth, maybe they can get you in and out of there with traffic easier. Who knows? But right now, that's very much up in the air. Another issue is the draft coming to D.C. Now that they move it from city to city, why can't we have it down on the Mall? And also training camp. They held it this year in Ashburn, spent a lot of money to fix things up, including removing that ridiculous artificial turf field, which they hadn't used in decades for practice. We used to set up and do our radio shows there back in the day. So he's changed a lot of things there. But, would they continue to hold training camp in Ashburn, or would they move it? Those two issues addressed last night by Harris. First, the possibility of the draft in D.C.
Yeah, I think we're going to get that done. I mean, we're talking to the league about it. It's a question of timing, and it's going to be a few years off. They plan it way in advance. And, I mean, listen, think about the idea of having, and I'm not breaking news here, because it's not done yet, but think about a draft on the mall or whatever and how exciting that would be for the city of Washington, for the NFL. So everyone sees that. And so obviously there's a lot of complexity to it with, the Park Service, and now I'm lifting the covers a little, but, there's things that need to get done. But I think that I believe that it will happen, and it's a question of when. And so, yeah, it'll be great. I mean, it'd be super fun to do that here, and I think great for the country as well, and great for the NFL.
And then training camp is the other one. Some teams take it on the road, some teams don't. What have your interactions been like with Dan? Has he expressed a preference, and do you have one?
Yeah, look, I think that Dan's preference, I think, is to be away from where the main training, away from the training ground, get away, come together, and so I think, as you're aware, there's some things that we're working on, but I think that you can do that in lots of different ways. You can do it at a permanent home. You can do that on a season-in, season-out basis. And so we have some options, but I think that's his preference. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, well, they talked about doing it this year. There were some internal discussions, as I was told, about moving, because they didn't know whether they could even get Ashburn fixed up, but they managed to get through it. So it could move to another site. And Tom Lavero had a column last week in the Washington Times that he thinks that West Virginia might be in play. So we'll see. For years, they did it in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. Then there was, because the stadium was being built in Maryland, I'm not even sure why. I guess I could do some research on this, but in like 30 years ago, like 94 or so, as they were getting ready to build the stadium, which opened in 97, they moved training camp to Frostburg. It was there for a couple of years, and then they moved it back to Ashburn, and then they moved it back to Carlisle because Marty wanted to have it there, and then Spurrier decided that it was ridiculous to be in Carlisle, so they moved it back to Ashburn, and then you had the whole debacle in 2000 where Snyder was charging people to come in. So I don't know, but that it does sound like they're moving in that direction. It sounds like that they would like to hold training camp somewhere else besides Ashburn. The name issue, and I credit Harris for this. He doesn't run away from it. It's pretty clear he's not thrilled with Commanders, but obviously they're not going to go back to Redskins. That's not going to happen. But instead of saying, hey, that's we can't deal with that now. We got a stadium to fix up here. We got a season to play. We got to hire a president. No, he deals with it. So the question came up about the name, and now we're about to start the third season for Commanders, and the feeling of, how it's gone over, and does he feel like it's starting to get some more acceptance?
It does matter. I just think that, and certainly, like we've been very clear, we can't, for obvious reasons, the old name can't come back. But right now, we're focused on things that unify the team around our football team, right? And unify the city around our football team. And so the first objective is we got to start winning football games. And we need everyone supporting the team and not things that might, drive people apart. Secondly, obviously, we're trying to find a new home. And again, unifying the city around that is important. And so, the name is one of those things that a lot of opinions. But, I can't say, I've certainly not forgotten. Like I said, I grew up here, okay? So I understand it. And, we brought back, we're going to start to do things that bring us back to our heritage, honoring our past. The gold, you saw the gold pants. Those are easy things to do. So, We are doing research, and we're thinking about it. But like right now, we're prioritizing the things that we've talked about, and that's kind of the rationale for it.
Okay, so he didn't really tell you anything specific there or definitive, but you can tell by the answer that they are looking in the direction that if they do change the name, that it won't be obviously Redskins. He says we can't do that for sure. But could it have some type of reference to Native Americans? We had the whole Dan Quinn thing in the offseason where he wore a knockoff T-shirt that had feathers hanging off a W on it, and people, oh, look at that. And that could have been a little bit of a trial balloon there. He's talking about the yellow pants that they wore when they were the Redskins. They never wore yellow pants when they were the Commanders, so there's that. You know, I've said this many, many times that I think it should go back to being the Washington football team. That's because then you really haven't replaced the name, but they have something that works, and it would be. And I get in the years that they did it, the 2 years, I got used to it, and they would stand out as unique in the same way that the Cleveland Browns do for not having a logo on their helmet, you know, for whatever that's worth. So it sounds to me like they're moving in the direction, if they do change the name, that it will have something to do with, as he says, the heritage. You also have the RFK bill being blocked in the Senate by Senator Steve Daines of Montana, who wants to make sure that the Native Americans are honored by the team. He's not expecting them to turn it back into Redskins, but the helmet logo, which was designed in 1972, they're going to honor the man who created the logo for George Allen back in 72. So they're going to do that at one of the games this year. So that's what it sounds like to me, that they're going to try and come up with a name that obviously isn't Redskins, but is it close to honoring the heritage of a team that won a bunch of championships? They won 5 championships, and, you know, sure, the name is racist, and it should never go back to Redskins. But when they were the Redskins and when they were winning, that united the city. And I think he's trying to recapture that a little bit. That's what I read into that. Last thing is the 2024 season. And, you know, and I'll get to Jahan Dotson in a moment, but when Dotson was traded last week to Philadelphia, that brought up new speculation that they're going to be in the market for a big wide receiver, one of these disgruntled guys who wants a new contract, and try and bring him in. And this is Harris on expectations for 2024, which leads me to believe, and you listen to this, but this leads me to believe that they're not going to go in this direction, and they're going to pretty much stick with what they have. They may pick up a receiver or two off the waiver wire when the cuts start to come in today and tomorrow. But as far as swinging for the fences this year, doesn't sound like that's going to happen. This is Harris on the 2024 year.
I'm focused on our long-term goals, which is I want to be elite and playing deep into the playoffs or competing for Super Bowls season in and season out. And you know, I'm focused on building, and I think this will be a better season than last year across the board. I think we're going to be, you know, obviously the identity that Dan and Adam have been talking about, you know, of you know, the team is front and center in terms of us being competitive, of being you know, punishing, of competing at the end. And obviously, you know, the record was dismal last year, and we better do better than that. But like really, I think this is going to be a way better season for all of those things, and a lot of the intangibles. Jaden continuing developing, hopefully into what we think and all hope that and know that he can be. And so a lot of intangibles, and then you should see improvement across the board on everything. Whether that I've learned a long time ago in sports not to make like bold predictions, so I will not. This is sports, and I'll leave that to the bettors in Vegas and other things, people who are better at making predictions than I am. But you know, for sure, we're all going to have a much funner time.
Yeah, so they're going to be better this year, he says, but he's not predicting playoffs, and he's looking long term, right? He's looking for a team that can be a contender year in and year out, and he knows that that's not going to happen. As good as Jaden Daniels may become this year, and he may have a C.J. Stroud type of season, but to expect the team to be as good as Houston was last year when they made the playoffs and won a playoff game, that might be a little bit high. But 2-3 years down the road, yeah. And by the time, that's still a long ways off, 6 seasons down the road. But by the time they're ready to move into the new stadium, they're a team that's built to win. They're a team that you can look at year in and year out and say, yeah, if this and that go right, they have health, they might be in the mix to win the NFC. They could be that good. Now, back to the wide receiver situation. And again, the projections from Nikki Jabala in the Post on who is going to make the 53. Obviously, Terry McLaurin. De'Ami Brown has been a big surprise in camp. He looks like he may be the number 2 guy. They took Luke McCaffrey in the 3rd round. He's going to stick. Olamide Zaccheaus was with Philadelphia last year. They like him. Bryson Tremaine is a big wide receiver, and Byron Pringle. And she expects Jamison Crowder to be cut, and Martavius Bryant, though Bryant really had a big game last night. And to hear Dan Quinn talk, it sounds like he might make the roster. But Dotson over the weekend held a news conference in Philadelphia where he was traded, and he talked about after 2 years in the NFL, going into his 3rd season in Washington, how it felt to get dealt.
It was a shock, just because all I know in the NFL is Washington Commanders, but at the end of the day, it's a business, and I understand that very much so, and it all happens so fast, and you don't kind of get to react to it. But, I would say being out here today and being on the field and kind of taking the field and taking it all in a little bit, I'm very excited. It got me, I got goosebumps leaving the field today, just because, Philly, growing up only an hour and a half away from here, you understand the passion. You understand how much people care about the Eagles. So, seeing the fans go crazy literally after a 3rd preseason game, it was exciting. It got me a little excited to be here.
And he also says that when he left Washington, apparently left on pretty good terms.
I talked to Coach Dan Quinn and Mr. Adam Peters, and they told me they think very highly of me. It was kind of just something that happens. These things happen all the time in the NFL. So I'm not going to take it personal until I see Washington. But, it's exciting. I'm excited to be here. I can't wait to put on the black and green.
Won't take
and I can't wait to get to work.
I think it's the white and green, but okay, the black and green. And as far as, he won't take it personally until he sees the Commanders. I believe they don't play until December. I think that's the case. Both games against Philadelphia this year are late in the season. So, if he comes back to haunt them, so be it. But he clearly didn't fit into their plans, and they moved on. Wind up with a 3rd-round pick, a former first-rounder. But you look at the Ron Rivera drafts, and it just you look at the projected cuts. It's one drafted guy after another. Ricky Stromberg could go. Cole Turner, though he made a nice catch last night, could be on the block. Fedarian Mathis could go. They've had it has not worked out. It has not worked out well. And I think just because he was a number 1 draft pick last year that he's going to make the team. But Manuel Forbes, very much on the bubble as far as his NFL career goes. He was awful last year. He has looked inconsistent in the preseason. So I don't think he's a slam dunk to be on this team for a long, long time. All right, that wraps it for me. We have now a new lineup, so it's Bram coming up next, Tony at 2 o'clock, and I will see you back here tomorrow at 9 a.m.